Okay, let's do some reflections on the day. So it all started out well. I got that throttle cable situation figured out. That's pretty much bulletproof now. Did that this morning. And was supposed to go out with the wife for the maiden run, but she decided to stay home and do some other things, so I ended up going alone. And that could have been my downfall. But anyway, I've never drove one of these machines before in my life. Driven four-wheelers and side-by-sides and stuff like that, but never nothing like this. I'll tell you what, it's a whole different ballgame. Excuse me, I just ate a big dinner and took a hot shower, and I'm gonna be passing out here pretty soon. But anyway, it's like all up in your face. It's real mechanical. So it's loud. It's you can hear all the gears turning and the chains turning, and it's all herky jerky and throwing you around, and yeah, it's quite the experience. I learned in short order that you really got to pay attention when you're driving at high speed, because you get on some uneven ground, and even with only 3 psi in those tires, she starts to bounce like a basketball. And then next thing you know, you're sideways and shooting off into a swamp or something. And not only that, but you try to correct with the brakes, and if you don't get it right, it'll spin you on a dime and slingshot you right into the pickers. So they're not meant for high speed, that's for sure. Unless you're on a flat road or a flat grassy field or something like that where there's no bumps. But once you get in the bumps and the whoops, that thing's just like a basketball. So I learned that. I have a problem with the engine. I don't know what's going on, but it backfires when I let off on the gas. Or when I decrease throttle, it'll backfire. That's not good. I don't know if the timing's off or on the engine or slopped out or what. What else went wrong? In addition to the obvious. So that was a problem. It doesn't want to idle. I think I have the idle turned too low, actually. But I'm worried on this machine because if you turn the idle up too high, there's no clutch, so you can't get it into gear. If the transmission is spinning too good, the secondary clutch, there's no clutch like you'd have that disengages the engine from the transmission. The only thing you really have is the idle speed. So if it's idle too high, it spins the transmission and the secondary clutch starts to open up, and now when you try to shift it from neutral into lower high range or reverse, it'll grind. So in order to make gear changes, you have to come to a pretty near complete stop and then shift into whatever you want. Well, if your engine's revving too high, that doesn't work. So I'm going to try adjusting it, turning it up until I can get to the point where it's starting to get dicey to get it into gear, because it did not want to stay idling. So the problem I had when I was winching is I wanted to keep the engine running when I was winching it, because otherwise it puts such a drain on the battery, and it's a little tiny battery. It's not a full-size deep cycle marine battery, which I might end up putting something like that in there. And you'll suck that battery dead, and now you can't get it started. Well, you can pull start it, but I don't have a rope rigged up for that yet. So So I was struggling with that. Every time I try to winch, I'm running the winch controller with my left hand. I'm trying to keep the throttle RPMs up with my right hand and trying to steer it as it's pulling and driving out of the hole. Yeah, it was a circus. But the previous owner always had tracks on this. He left the tracks on all the time. Never took them off. So the next problem that I discovered when I got buried in that first sippy hole I went in is that the right rear tire has no power to it. So I'm thinking that's what was causing my vehicle, or causing the vehicle to always pull to the right, because I had 3 tires driving on the left side and only 2 on the right. So it would, more power on the left, it would always want to pull to the right, and I'd have to correct with the left brakes. If you have the tracks on, you'd never notice that, because both tracks are spinning, evenly. So the right rear shear pin is lunched. You got to replace that. But then when I got into the sippy hole that doomed the whole adventure, I heard a snap when I was under load, when I was in the mud and I was trying to get out. I heard it wasn't loud, but I heard a snapping sound. And I'm pretty sure that the main drive gear, that shear pin snapped. And these aren't pins, okay? So somebody at some point replaced the shear pins, the hardened shear pins, with standard bolts. And those are soft, and those will shear like right now. So, sure, that's what happened there. Another problem I noticed is when the machine was in the mud and it was laboring, trying to get out of the mud, I kept feeling this thumping under the footboards, under the floorboard. So I took the floor pan out to observe the chains when I was trying to extract the vehicle, and the chain tensioners were actually coming up like this. So the chain is actually is bowing. It's actually flexing, which probably means that the chains are stretched. And not only that, but the springs that are on the chain tensioners are weak, and they can't apply enough downforce on those chains. This thing is a 1986 Argo. It's 30 years old plus, and I don't think those chains have ever been replaced. I pretty much guarantee it, because that's pretty pricey. And I don't see any literature in the information that I got from the seller. All the maintenance records and repairs and stuff were included in a folder, and there's no mention of any chains. So I'm pretty sure the chains are stretched, and that's going to be spendy. The chain tensioners, I'm sure the springs are stretched, so there's not enough downforce. I got to replace those. While I'm at it, I'm probably going to replace the rub blocks as well. Yeah, this is turning into a total rebuild. Now, I can't really fault the seller. The left half of my brain says I got shafted. I paid way too much for this machine when it needs pretty much a whole rebuild. But I don't think he knew that. He didn't intentionally set out to screw me over. I don't think he knew the little minute things that are wrong with the machine. He just drove it. And with the tracks on, I mean, he told me straight up when I bought it from him, he goes, there's something wrong with the choke or the carburetor or something, because you got to play with the choke to get it to stay running and to find the sweet spot. Well, I fixed that problem. But now I have a backfiring issue. So when you, and then you let off the gas, it's like, pow! I don't know what that is. I don't know what's causing that. It's still burning rich, even with a brand new carburetor. So I could have a valve issue. That's more than likely what I got going on. The valves need to be adjusted on that engine. That's probably never been done. That's a motor out deal. Gonna pull a motor out for that. The tires. That's funny. They're basically basketballs on sticks. There is no gription in water or mud whatsoever. Nothing. They just spin. As soon as I went into the first sippy hole, I just went in, just spinning. No dig, no forward traction, no reverse traction, nothing. Just sat there. I'm like, oh yeah. On dry pavement, yeah. If the tracks were on, yeah. But just tires, no. So I have a complete new set of 6 tires coming tomorrow. I need to get rims for those tires because I'm keeping these rims and tires, these Runamucks, I'm keeping them, and I'm going to use those in the winter to power the tracks because they're already chewed to hell anyway from the tracks being used with them. So I'm going to keep those and use those for tracks. But I got a brand new set of Kenda tractor tires coming. But now, you know, that was 400 some bucks, and then I got to get rims yet. That's another, you know, there's 60 bucks a rim, 60 times 6. 360, 400 bucks there, and now I possibly might need new chains and new shear pins for the axles, drive axles, and I possibly might have a motor problem with the backfiring issue. Fortunately, I mean, that's pretty daunting. And then you think about that for the price that I paid for the machine. It's kind of bothers me a little bit. But again, like I say, he didn't know. Because these are all small details that you would figure out as you were driving it or using it or whatever. He just flat out didn't know what was going on. So right now, I'm not in any rush right now to use the machine, so it can spend some time in the stable, tore apart, doing its thing. But here we are again with another 6x6 in my collection that I can't drive because I got to work on it. The whole point of buying this for us was to have something we could just jump in and go and enjoy right away. And that's not going to be how it is. But I'm kind of picky myself too, and I want to make sure that everything on the machine is in good working order and satisfactory so it doesn't let me down like it did today. The whole purpose of these first 6 or so journeys that I go on is basically shakedown cruises to find out how does it behave, how does it drive, what little quirks and idiosyncrasies does it have, and what needs to be fixed. So I'm not in a big push right now to go on any adventures, you know, camping adventures or anything like that. I'd like to, but I'm not on a big push for that. Today was adventure enough. I mean, I had a ball. I literally had a blast. The logistics of trying to get that machine out by myself was staggering. I mean, so the machine is face down the trail. It's buried and high centered on a mud hole. I can't crack it free. In the process of somewhere in the journey, I snap the drive shear pin on the left side and I lose all 3 wheels on that side. They got no power to them. I only got power to 2 right wheels on the right side, the front and the middle. The rear's just sitting there spinning, or stationary. The minute that happened and I couldn't get out of that hole, I was dead in the water, and I knew that I had a problem on my hands. So I ended up walking 1.5 miles or so, about a mile maybe, back to the Jeep, and basically had to drive the Jeep with the big trailer through that woods and those narrow trails and those muddy holes. And then once I got there, I had to unhook the trailer up on high dry ground turned the trailer completely around by myself, and it's a heavy trailer. I built it. It's all 1/4-inch wall square tubing, 2-inch square tubing. It's heavy. Turn it around and shove it off the trail into the woods to park it so I had enough room to get by. And then hook the winch up to the toad and drag the toad out of the mud hole with the Jeep to high ground. And then use the winch on the Jeep to physically turn the toad around by hooking the cable on the front eyelet on the front bumper and just basically drag the thing completely around so it's facing the opposite direction. Then I had to back about 1/8 of a mile back down the trail through a couple of muddy sippy holes in reverse until I found a suitable place to turn the Jeep around, and then back through those sippy holes again in reverse and up the hill, and then hook the trailer on, pull the trailer out of the woods, and hook it onto the Jeep, and then back it up to Toad, and then use the winch on Toad to drag the machine up onto the trailer. This is when I found out that that winch is more than likely an original winch from 1986 because it actually has an Argo logo on it. And it's probably worn out because if you use the winch under load for 5 seconds, it'll overheat and it'll thermally shut down. You gotta wait for about 15 seconds and then it'll work again, shut down, work again, shut down. Not only that, but I had to have the machine running in order to use the winch so I didn't suck the battery dead. So that meant I had to be in the machine, keep the RPMs because I didn't want to idle, keep the RPMs up with the twist grip while operating the winch controller with my left hand and trying to steer the toad onto the trailer in a straight line because it was kind of at an angle on the trail. Oh yeah, it was quite the ordeal. But I actually had fun because I like challenges like that. You know, get yourself in a pickle and try to figure out how to get out. So it doesn't appear that I took on any water when I was in that first sippy hole. So my drain plugs are working good and there's no leaks. So that's a good thing. So now she's in the stable. I'm going to rinse it out a little bit, I think, and I'm going to start tearing into it and figure out what's going on. Since I'll have the firewall off of the machine, I can also service the transmission, which I'm sure has never been done as well, like a fluid change. I can also take a look at the brakes, make sure the calipers are not dragging on the rotors, things like that. So I got some work in front of me. But at least when it's done, I'll be able to count on it, you know. So, all right, I'm literally about ready to pass out. So I'm going to let you guys go. Catch you on the flip side next time I see you. We'll be out in the shop tearing into it, see what we can find. So stick around.